The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
It was a sure thing that one of the 4 astronauts just announced for a mission to orbit the moon would be a Canadian. And the lucky guy is Jeremy Hansen of London, Ontario. Tonight, he explains why his childhood dream only came together thanks to teamwork and Canada. Then, very much back here on Earth, journalist and filmmaker Mellissa Fung is with us on her new book, Between Good and Evil, The Stolen Girls of Boko Haram. Also, in the wake of this pandemic, we'll get some insight for children and adolescents coping with grief and loss and how the adults in their lives can help. It's Tuesday, April 18th, and that's all ahead on the agenda. For the first time ever, a Canadian is taking a moonshot. It's part of the 4-person NASA mission called Artemis II that will return humans to lunar orbit for the first time in more than 50 years. He is Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen, and he joins us now from Houston, Texas. I gather, Jeremy, Houston, we do not have any problems today. Is that fair to say?
None yet, Steve. Great to join you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Let's just set up our discussion to come with the following. Sheldon, if you would, let's roll it.
The Artemis II mission, the first human voyage to the moon since Apollo mission ended more than 50 years ago, will consist of 3 Americans and 1 Canadian.
He is a Master of Science in Physics, an F-18 pilot, and a Canadian astronaut. Your mission specialist, Jeremy Hansen.
And we dissolve to a picture of you and your crew. And I'm, forgive me, going to start with the obvious question, which was, how was that day?
Oh, that was a terrific day. You know, for myself personally, it was really an inspiring day. But most importantly for me, what it highlighted was just how much Canada has contributed to this international partnership, that we are invited to be on that stage, highlighted the way we were. Canadian flags flying, the contributions of thousands of Canadians over decades to bring Canada to this point, just shared on that international stage, I thought was something to behold.
At what point does it actually sink in with you that you're going to be the first Canadian ever to take a shot at the moon?
Yeah, I think it maybe hasn't completely sunk in. Certainly every once in a while, you know, I'll look up at the moon and I'll be like, wow, I'm like really going there. And I kind of have to convince myself that it's true and it's really happening. You know, right now it just seems like it's words, but I know, I mean, we're already been working on it. We're starting to dig into some of this stuff. I've got emails about training plans, and yeah, Canada's really going to the moon. It's incredible.
And tell us about the main goal of your Artemis II mission.
Yeah, so Artemis II will be the first time we fly humans on this new spacecraft called Orion, which we will need for future space or for missions to the lunar surface. But this mission will be to buy down the risk, to do that testing of this capsule, and we'll fly it around. We'll leave Earth, we'll orbit the Earth a couple of times, so it'll take about 24 hours to do that, check out all the systems. And then once we're convinced it's ready for deep space, then we're gonna take it around the moon. 1 lap around the moon would be about a 10-day mission total. We're gonna do manual flying, manual piloting of the spacecraft to assess its docking capabilities. We're gonna test out its life support equipment. We're gonna test out exercise methodology and just figure out how to do exploration in deep space again.
How well do you know the other members of the crew?
Oh, I know my crew really well. Reed Wiseman and I were classmates. We joined the astronaut corps at the same time. So I've been down here in Houston with him since 2009. We went through all our basic training together. He's one of my best friends. And then Victor and Christina, they were the class after us. So we're actually pretty close. We spent a lot of time together socially since they joined the corps, and I've worked with them tons professionally. I've got a great deal of respect for everybody on the crew.
For missions to actually be successful, do you have to like the members that you're going to be up there with?
I don't think that that's an absolute criteria. Of course, professionally, you could work through something like that, and that won't be an issue in our case. In fact, even in our core, our broader astronaut or international astronaut corps. So Canada has 4 active astronauts, but we're part of a much larger corps, over 60 astronauts down here in Houston. And we spend a lot of time on that because although you could get the mission done, we've come to recognize that if you're firing on all cylinders, if you're really working on those team skills, empathy, taking care of one another, those things really do matter for ultimate performance. And that's really what we're shooting for. We're trying to maximize performance of our team.
And does the same crew remain intact for Artemis 3?
No, definitely not. There'll be another crew assigned to Artemis 3. Even before we fly Artemis 2, there'll be a second crew coming behind us and ready to take on that next challenge of sending humans back to the moon. I think it's an important point. Artemis 2 is meant to be just one next step. It's not a pinnacle. Certainly not a pinnacle in the Artemis program. And I think what's important for Canadians to recognize is this is not the end for us either. I mean, this is just where we've gotten after decades, and we're aiming much, much higher. Definitely, I won't be satisfied if we don't see a Canadian walk on the moon at some point in the future. And then on to Mars. Canada has a lot to offer. It's one of the things I've been sharing is, it's tremendous American leadership to create a program that makes space for the international partnership. But it's Canada's can-do attitude that has stepped up and taken advantage of that opportunity and is delivering tremendous value. I mean, I am so proud of what I have seen Canadians accomplish across our country over the past 14 years that I've been in the space program. I know they have a lot more to give.
Well, let me pick up on one part of that answer you gave, which is that you said you'd be ticked off if at some point a Canadian doesn't get to walk on the moon again. And I have to believe, Jeremy, you're going to forgive me for this, I have to believe that there's a small part of you, or maybe a big part of you, that's thinking, I'm going to get so close to the bloody moon and I don't actually get to walk on the moon. Man, am I ticked off. Am I close on that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think you're close at all. I mean, I'll always want to walk on the moon, and I may walk on the moon one day, never say never. But right now, I'm truly, authentically very pleased and happy to be part of this test flight. This may not look like a big challenge because we're not landing on the moon, but it is. And I know that. I know it's going to be, a big career challenge for me. I'm excited to sink my teeth into it. I know it's an important step along the way. And who knows what the future brings. But this is how everyone before me has done it. They've all made their contribution, and every it's one more step forward, one after the other. I'm standing on the shoulders of people like Marc Garneau, Roberto Bondar, and so on through the astronaut corps, and the thousands of people whose names you don't know who made this a reality. I'm just one more of those people.
I presume at some point along the way, despite all the effort you put into being able to realize this dream of yours, you have to deal with the very real possibility that it will never happen. Did you think this might never happen?
Oh, yeah, no, I never assumed that it would, for sure. There's a long list of things that could prevent you from achieving a goal like this. But the lesson for young Canadians is, just create a life that you're happy with. Just do something that you're happy doing. And that's what I've always done. I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. That was an amazing career for me. And then I wanted to be an astronaut, and I'm working here. If I never fly in space, this has been a really rewarding experience for me thus far. I love the team I work on, but ultimately that's where I'm aiming. I'm aiming to fly around the moon now. And I'm aiming to make the maximum contribution to Canada as we go forward.
For whatever reason, NASA, in its wisdom, has decided over the past 50 years that getting back to the moon was clearly not a priority. I guess if it had been, they'd have done it. What's changed?
Yeah, I think what you're actually hitting on is, it's not that they didn't want to go back to the moon, it's that they wanted to reinvent the technology, more reusable technology, systems like recycling systems. We recycle all of our water, almost all of our water on the International Space Station, for example. We recycle our carbon dioxide. These are the systems that are going to allow us to really get a foothold in the solar system. And we had to basically take a step back and figure out how to develop that. And now, it's actually really interesting to see we've curated a commercial partnership. So it's not just international, but it's also commercial. And this has really been enabling for us. So some people might be familiar with SpaceX, for example. That's been a really successful commercial collaboration between the partnership, and now they're building the lunar lander. And it's called Starship. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, we've got a long way to go on that vehicle, but it's aiming really high. And in Canada, we have those same commercial partnerships. We're building a third generation of space robotics that is being commercialized. We're looking at delivering health in deep space and food security, like producing food in deep space, but actually doing that in Canada on the planet first. We see those as commercial partnerships with government. So this is what's changing. And in my mind, it's actually very, very positive.
I should do a follow-up on that, because I know you've heard the criticism that the Jeff Bezos operation or the Elon Musk operation, as you just referenced, are, they've been described as ego trips by billionaires. Do you think there's more to it than that?
I think you have to look at the broader team. You have to look at what the team is accomplishing. What's happening here is, literally thousands upon thousands of people are being united under a goal to accomplish something. People get focused on individuals, but I kind of live this a little bit as an astronaut assigned to Artemis 2. It's got very little to do with me. I did my part, but it's really an enormous team of people that enable this to happen. And that's what I love seeing. When I see successes like the SpaceX successes, I think of honoring the thousands of people who have made that a reality. It wasn't trivial.
I don't mean to be a killjoy here, but you're the last person I have to tell about the dangers of going into space. We have seen numerous too many operations in the past that have not ended well. And I wonder how you deal with that internal question for yourself about making sure that you don't just go up, but that you come back as well.
Yeah, so, I think it's part of our honoring the people that have fallen before us in the pursuit of space exploration is to continue that on. And if I do meet that unfortunate end on this mission, it's really important to me that the message is that we shouldn't go, that the message is that you hopefully will honor that commitment and you will allow others to make the decision to take calculated risks. We're not, space cowboys by any stretch of the imagination. We are an incredible team of people that manage risk on a daily basis, and we're good at it. And we know that by managing risk, sometimes we will get it wrong. The word manage risk does not mean you remove risk. It means you make educated decisions, and that is how we'll manage the risk. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the four of us will get on that spacecraft and we will say, this risk has been managed. We accept the risks that are out there. And if one of those happens to get us, then, that was just the way it was meant to be. And we hope that you carry on the torch.
How old were you when you knew you wanted to be an astronaut?
I was really young. I was talking to my parents about this just recently as we were coming up to this announcement. And my mom was reminding me that, the story I tell of seeing Neil Armstrong in Encyclopedia A and being, blown away by the fact humans had walked on the moon. That was about 5 years old. And that was what led them to include the Kennedy Space Center in our tour or in our trip to Florida that year. And so, yeah, it's been a long time I've had this in the back of my head.
Maybe help me figure this out a little better, because I'm actually old enough to have remembered that. I was a 9-year-old kid at summer camp who watched Neil Armstrong walk on the moon live, but I never wanted to become an astronaut as a result of seeing that. Clearly that connected with you in a different way. Do you know why?
Yeah, I could not tell you why. I think it's it's inspiration. I can see, as I'm telling you this story, I can literally see an image of that page in Encyclopedia A in my brain. Like, it made an impression on me at a very early age, and it stuck. And I changed my treehouse into a spaceship. I had circuit breakers for switches and controls and dials, popsicle sticks, and I was going on space missions. I can't tell you why, but that really captured my imagination. And then I, inadvertently did something else. I told people that I wanted to do this. And that is actually the key point for me that kept me going, because people were like, oh, well, if you're interested in space, maybe you want to learn to fly, or maybe you want to join Air Cadets. And it was just one after the other, people investing in me that enabled this dream to become a reality.
I'm going to choose a completely frivolous question for our final question. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Go for it.
What's your favorite space movie?
Oh, I think, certainly I grew up on Star Wars, so it would be a shame not to mention it. But recent one that I think really captures the spirit of how we explore space today is The Martian. I read that book, I saw the movie, and what I love about that movie is it captures the approach the overall team takes to solve problems for space exploration. And I think the author did a really great job of capturing it in that movie.
Did you ever meet Matt Damon?
No, not yet. Maybe someday.
Maybe someday. Well, listen, you're checking boxes almost on a daily basis by having dreams come true. So someday you will meet him, I'm sure. I want to thank you very much for taking time out of what I know is a crazy schedule to join us here on TVO tonight. And Godspeed, Jeremy Hansen.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm very proud of Canada. I very much appreciate all the Canadians that have made this a possibility. Thanks for your time. Take care.
Almost 10 years ago, news broke that the terrorist group Boko Haram had kidnapped 300 schoolgirls in Nigeria. They were neither the first nor last taken, and for many, the whereabouts of these young women remains unknown. Journalist and filmmaker Mellissa Fung could not look away from their stories. She told them in her 2021 documentary, Captive, and goes deeper still in her new book, Between Good and Evil, The Stolen Girls of Boko Haram. And that brings Mellissa Fung back to our studio tonight. It's great to see you again.
Thanks again for having me.
Not at all. How you doing?
I'm okay. I'm good. I'm glad the book is finally coming out, and maybe I can now. Well, I can never move on from this story, but this is like, let's say, part 2 of the TVO documentary.
I know that about you, man. You and I don't know each other that well, but I know about you that you just can't move on when something like this preoccupies your life, right?
No, it's true, and I keep going back, and I keep going back, and who knows, in 10 years there could be a sequel to this book. It's like with Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I keep going back and going back.
Well, let's not assume that everybody remembers this story, so we're going to do a little background here just to remind people. Boko Haram was what?
Boko Haram is a terror group in Nigeria. Their name, it translates roughly into Western education as forbidden. Haram is the word for forbidden. And they have basically wreaked terror across northeastern Nigeria and the Lake Chad area. So the neighboring Cameroon, Niger, have also kind of felt their reign of terror for the last almost 20 years now. And so, you mentioned this off the top, their big kidnapping in 2014 of the 276 girls from Chibok sort of introduced the world to who they were, because that was a big thing. But what many of us didn't know was that they had been raising villages and kidnapping women and girls for many years before and many years since. And so, the book is about some of those girls who we don't hear about, who are not part of that Chibok cohort that spawned the movement Bring Back Our Girls, which I'm sure you remember.
And, well, Michelle Obama holding that sign up, and
Kim Kardashian.
Well, okay, good for Kim, but I think when the First Lady does it, it's, I was going to say more impactful, but then again, with Kim Kardashian, maybe not. What's the point for Boko Haram? Like, why do they kidnap women? What is that about?
They want to build, for lack of a better word, a caliphate, right? They are, they base themselves sort of loosely on what the Taliban were doing in Afghanistan back in the 1990s, and actually what they're doing there now.
Again today.
And so they don't believe that girls should go to school. They don't believe in Western education. Their interpretation of Islam is very, very strict, very, very similar to the Taliban's ideology. And so they want to build for themselves a territory that where they're allowed to enact this kind of strict interpretation of their religion.
Here's you writing in the book. This is from Between Good and Evil. The word kidnap has been a trigger for me since late 2008, when I was taken at gunpoint by a similar band of armed men. Except that was in Afghanistan, not Nigeria. A hole in the ground in Wardak province, not the Sambisa forest in Borno State. Men sympathetic to the Taliban, not Boko Haram. But once a hostage, you become a hostage to your memories. And certain words become triggers that have you staring down the dark barrel into a place you have no desire to return to and no choice but to revisit. It is the dread that lurks in your subconscious, ready to pounce when you least expect it. Okay, Mellissa, let's pick that apart a little bit. You have no desire to return to, but no choice but to revisit. Explain that contradiction, if you would.
It's what happened to me is always going to be a part of me now. I've written about it. It has informed my journalism since it happened. But I can't help but go back to being held in a hole sometimes. You know, certain things trigger. And when I heard about Boko Haram and the Chibok kidnappings, it triggered my own memories that you don't want to remember. Of being held hostage, being kidnapped at gunpoint, you know, being driven miles and miles outside of, you know, where you are. And so, you know, you have no choice but to revisit those memories. And that's always part of trauma. And I think that's what I'm trying to say in this book, is that trauma leaves such a long trail. And, you know, for me, it's been 15 years almost. And there are still times, certain times of the year, like around Thanksgiving when I was kidnapped, I had these recurring nightmares. So it's like the body remembers, and you can't help but go back and revisit a place that you don't ever want to see again.
Do you ever have a day where you don't think about this?
Yeah, many days when I don't think about it, but I'm very preoccupied because I think of the trauma that, you know, I carry. I see everything through a different lens than most people. And so, you know, there are days when I don't think about it, but there are many days when I'm thinking about the girls in the book. There are many days when I'm working on helping women get out of Afghanistan. And that is all part of it. And so I might not be thinking about my own trauma, but it's other people's that come to mind.
Well, that's the distinction I wanted to make, because on the one hand, when you are triggered, you do suffer. But on the other hand, you can be triggered to do something. And obviously, through your work, you are trying to use that triggering in a constructive fashion to help other people. How's it going?
I have to admit, Steve, it's been a tough 2 years. You know, in the middle of writing this book, Afghanistan fell back into Taliban power. And so I actually had to stop writing this book because I was so desperately working around the clock to help friends who were trying to get out of the country. And that work still isn't over. It's crazy that it's fallen to people like me who have no idea how to do this. But you know, it's the book is delayed because I had to deal with that. And so, a long way to answer your question, no, it's not going that well. I don't have, you know, there are days when I just feel like totally despairing about what's going on in the world.
We made commitments as a government, as a country, to people in those countries to be helpful. And we're not fulfilling those commitments. Do you know why?
I don't know why. It's a question I've asked a lot of people and people in government. I mean, we were dealing with, you know, Canadian Immigration and Refugee Canada, and talking to people about trying to get our Afghans on a list, get them a visa, get them sponsorship. I keep saying we purport to have a feminist foreign policy, you know? And so every Afghan woman now should be able to apply for refugee and asylum because they are now under gender apartheid in their own country. And so you have countries like Denmark, Finland, and Sweden who have said this. Afghan women and girls are now eligible to apply for asylum in our countries because really they're being persecuted in their own. And I don't know why our country, which purports to have a feminist foreign policy, refuses to follow suit.
It doesn't purport to. It actually boasts about the fact. I mean, we hear cabinet ministers all the time boasting about, the prime minister as well, boasting about the fact that we have a feminist-based foreign policy. and yet you clearly don't see it here.
What good is a feminist-based foreign policy if you have a country where half of the population, women, are being subjugated and we're not doing anything about it?
That's a great question. Why
I don't know.
I know you've put that to people in positions of authority. What do you get back from them?
Nothing. You know, next time you have somebody on from the government, Steve, can you please ask on my behalf?
I'd be happy to.
I'm at a loss.
Okay, let's tell some of the stories of the people that you have met and told us about. Zara, for example. What do we need to know about her?
Zara, I always think that Zara had the most potential before she was taken by Boko Haram into the forest. You know, she was doing very well in school. She had aspirations to be a doctor. And then after she came back from the forest, it all fell apart. And now, you know, she's trying to do other things. And those dreams of education are more or less over. But she's putting a lot of hope into her young daughter that she brought back from the forest. So I think the dreams that died in her, she's now seeding in that little girl, Aisha.
And there's a very classic refugee/immigrant story, right? A sacrifice of one's own life in the hope that the next generation does better.
I know, and I'm saddest about Zara because I think she had the most potential, and we tried. My crew and I, you know, supported them to go back. We found a boarding school in Yola that agreed to take them, but they were not keeping up in classes, and they were asked to leave. So we found another boarding school. Same thing happened. We got them a private tutor to try to help them, you know, after classes. And I think I just had to realize that maybe that time has passed, that education, they're not thinking about that. They should have graduated years ago. So going back to grade 8, you know, when you're 19 years old, it's very tough. And so now we're just trying to figure out what they want to do and hopefully, you know, be able to help them on a new path.
Gumbo, what's the story there?
Gambo, I say this in the book, and I said this in the film, and I'll keep saying it. You know, in another life, she would be walking the runways of Paris. She is just strikingly beautiful, and fiery. You know, so out of all the girls, she was the one that wanted revenge the most. But that's not an option that's necessarily available to them. She's now, you know, trying to find her path as well. Maybe doing some sales in her village.
Mama Boko Haram. Who is she?
She's, I think, one of the most interesting people I have met. You know, she knew the founder, Muhammad Yusuf, of Boko Haram many years ago, and a lot of his acolytes, you know, used to come around to her house for Sunday lunches. And so she saw herself as a go-between between the government and the terror groups, the members, because she could reach out directly to them and negotiate with them to release some girls, you know, and she has. And I'm not sure if the government felt like she was interfering too much, but they arrested her on some trumped up charges of fraud. And she's sitting in a prison right now in Maiduguri.
How many women and/or girls are still missing?
That's a good question, Steve. Nobody really knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody really knows.
How many have been taken altogether? Do we know that?
Nobody really knows. But it's safe to say, I think the International Committee of the Red Cross estimated that there were at least 20,000 people still missing in northeastern Nigeria. Most of them are women and girls.
Canada and Nigeria have had diplomatic relations for a very long time. I think going on 60 years, I think over 60 years actually. Has Canada done anything with that relationship to be helpful in this case?
I don't think so. I think I've already said too much about the Canadian government and lack of action in Afghanistan, but I didn't come across anything that they were necessarily doing to try to help. At the time the Chibok girls were kidnapped, I think a lot of people wanted their governments to step in, you know, and in the States, I know that they wanted the CIA to fly a drone over to see if they could find the girls. I don't know if anything, you know, like that was explored heard in Ottawa, but I didn't, in my travels and reporting the book, I didn't come across any Canadian involvement.
You know, I take no joy in saying this, but there is untold misery in so much of the world today. There's beautiful stuff happening, but there's so much untold misery. And how would you make the case that these particular individuals are worthy of the attention of the world in a way that they have not been so far, but that they deserve to be going forward?
It's tricky. That's a tricky question for me, because I'm shocked actually that this has not received more media attention. You know, we mentioned the Bring Back Our Girls with the Chibok. That became an internet sort of sensation, a hashtag for a few weeks, and nobody really took the time to figure out what was going on, right? To figure out what the group was all about, what they were, how many other girls had been taken. And so I think when you have this kind of kidnapping and this kind of havoc wreaking on this scale in a part of the world, you know, it's incumbent on journalists to try to dig a little deeper. And so I don't necessarily think it deserves more attention, needs more attention than, say, you know, Ukrainian women being kidnapped by Russian soldiers or taken hostage, or Afghan women being subjugated now. But it is just something that it's a part of the world that I think doesn't get enough attention.
Well, you've kind of, with that answer, anticipated my follow-up question here, which is, you know, and I don't want anybody to misinterpret what I'm about to say here, because it's fabulous that the world has responded in the way it has to the plight of Ukrainian people and being helpful to trying to keep them safe or get them out temporarily, et cetera, et cetera. But it does raise questions about whether or not, at the end of the day, all politics is local. There is a very strong Ukrainian diaspora in Canada. They vote. There are people of Ukrainian background, including the finance minister of the country, the deputy prime minister, in our parliament. Not so much with Nigeria. And I wonder if that sort of lack of representation in the Canadian population is what holds this country back from getting more involved.
Possibly. I mean, I like to make the comparison between Ukrainian refugees and Afghan refugees, you know, because the government announced in August 2021 that it would accept 40,000 Afghans, which at the time we were all grateful and, you know, helping our friends and colleagues apply for those places. To date, I think, I should have checked before I came, but I think just over 30,000 Afghans have come. This is in 18 months, more than 18 months. The number of Ukrainians who've come since last January, it's over 200,000.
Which is great.
According to the government's own website,
Yeah.
which is great.
But it does indicate where the priority is.
Unfortunately, I think it does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that, you know, we're not saying that Ukrainians don't deserve asylum given what's happening to their country, right? But, you know, some people, you know, including Human Rights Watch, would say that Canada has a two-tier refugee system.
Mm-hmm. Whose responsibility at the end of the day, you know, this is, like, the UN is the UN, but the UN doesn't have an army that it can send all over the place to free people, right? The UN is just a place where people do diplomacy and try to end famine and, you know, try to be peacekeepers and so on. So whose responsibility is it at the end of the day to solve these problems?
I don't know. I mean, I think it wouldn't hurt for our governments to be more involved in a humanitarian role. I know that they do that through the UN, but the UN is a complicated place and difficult to navigate. You know, for example, the government relies on the International Office of Migration, which is a UN agency, to bring refugees, right? And so there's more red tape sort of mired in that process. And so it has just fallen on to regular people, not just me, but the thousands of Canadians who've stepped up to sponsor Afghans and Ukrainians. You know, it just comes down to those of us who want to try to make a difference and try to help.
Well, that leads to my last question, which is, I mean, your reputation precedes you at this table and all over the place. You are, I mean, you're clearly one of the most committed and on-the-job journalists of any anybody ever in this country's
very
history.
kind.
No, I'm just telling it like it is. But I do wonder whether Mellissa Fung ever gets a chance just to go lie on a beach and take it easy.
I do. I spend, I spend summers in Croatia. My husband has a house on the coast. I take my dog. I have a sweet rescue terrier named Sammy. I take him paddle boarding. You know, that's where I find peace. And I feel like that, you know, we all need that time. I'm not doing this 24/7. It does occupy a big part of, you know, of my brain. But I need to be able to recharge to keep doing this kind of work.
I get it, because there's a lot of space between good and evil, as the title of the book suggests. Why'd you pick that title?
It was originally the title of the film, but our producers here at TVO, you know, thought a simpler, shorter title would be better for the film, so we kept it for the book.
Gotcha. It's so good to see you again. Keep on keeping on. And we are happy to remind people Between Good and Evil is out today. The Stolen Girls of Boko Haram. And of course, the documentary that you did with TVO not too long ago.
Thank you, Steve, for having me.
Thank you, and good to see you again.
Thank you.
More than 50,000 Canadians died of COVID-19. That was a lot of misery for a lot of families, and for some families reminded us that child and adolescent grief can be quite different from that experienced by adults. We got another reminder of that in the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry's book, Spare, in which he describes the aftermath of his mother, Princess Diana's tragic and senseless death. Cheryl Ann Kate is an associate professor in the Faculty of Social Work at Wilfrid Laurier University. Understanding child and adolescent grief is her area of expertise, and she joins us now for more. Great to have you in that chair.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Well, can we start by having you confirm what I suspect is the case, that grief in children and adolescents is quite different from grief in adults?
Absolutely. Absolutely right. It's very different.
How so?
So, adolescence is a very unique period in one's life and one's development. It's, I say, part of time, especially Euro-Western theories and values, where adolescents are asking, who am I? And trying to figure that out. So identity and struggling with how much am I connected to my family? How much am I connected to my friendship group? Even, you know, I think religion and spirituality, something that comes up a lot in Death and Dying, is something that people are. I think one young woman who participated in some research that I was doing, you know, was really, her father had died. Her father was Catholic. She was connected to religion and wanted to still connect to her father, but Catholicism wasn't in the same way that her father was connected to it. It wasn't as strong for her. So she needed to find something else that was meaningful for her and still allowed her to connect to her father.
Apropos of that, let me ask you about another Catholic guy who lost his father, and because I just so happen to have written a book about this guy. John Turner, the former Prime Minister of Canada, lost his dad from a botched operation when he was 2 years old. So he obviously has no firsthand memories of his father. Is that to say he did not suffer grief over the death of his father?
So that's such a great question. I would say as soon as someone can love, they can experience grief. But how they'll experience it is going to be quite different. So for someone who's an infant, the way that they would experience grief for the death of someone would more likely be in terms of how it impacts their caregiving, how someone takes care of them. So I don't know in terms of Mr. Turner's experience, but oftentimes when someone's really young and a parent dies, it can impact how other caretakers are able to take care of them.
So in that case, on his mother for sure. But how about as he got older and became increasingly aware of the absence of a male role model and well, father figure in his life? Does grief kick in at that point?
Absolutely. Like it, I would say at the, I just want to, even a clip that I often show that I think is great is a clip from Sesame Street when Mr. Hooper dies and they're trying to explain to Big Bird. So that is around toddlerhood. Big Bird is asking a lot of questions, trying to figure out what's going on, and they're very direct with him. Even older, 5 to 7, kids can begin to be given a script, given information, and definitely when someone's a teenager, even though adults and teenagers have issues with permanence around death, you can feel like, oh, I'm expecting a phone call from my mother, or I should call my parent. At that time, when someone's a teenager, they know that the death is permanent, the person's not coming back. It's interesting with Harry, which is not unusual. There's, especially at his age, there's compartmentalization for adolescents. So he also speaks about how he created this world or this life that he thought maybe his mom was coming back. Maybe she really wasn't dead. And that at some point he would learn that she survived the car crash. So things like that are not unusual.
Well, I was going to get to that later.
Okay,
but since,
sure, yeah,
but no,
absolutely.
you know what? But since you brought it up here, let's do that now, because he was 12. He was almost 13. I think he was 12 years old when his mother died. And Sheldon, I'm on page 3 here. Let's do the excerpt from Spare. From Prince Harry's book, and he describes how his father, now the King Charles, broke the news of his mother's death to him. And here's the excerpt from Spare. "What is it, Pa?" He sat down on the edge of the bed. He put a hand on my knee. "Darling boy, Mummy's been in a car crash." I remember thinking, crash, okay, but she's all right, yes? I vividly remember that thought flashing through my mind. And I remember waiting patiently for Pa to confirm that indeed Mummy was all right. And I remember him not doing that. Willie and I, Prince William, his brother obviously, finished dinner, watched some more TV, and then got up to our typical pre-bedtime hijinks. We ran up and down the long corridors. At some point, we bumped into Granny's Piper. And if you're in grief, even if you're 12 years old and don't know you're in grief, maybe especially if you don't know, bagpipes can drive you mad. It's interesting that he kind of went for the humorous touch at the end of all of that, but I guess humor's a part of all this, isn't it? Dealing with grief.
So important, and one of the most, I wouldn't say one of the most important, but definitely something that I would say to parents, to caregivers, to families, treasure moments where you can laugh together.
Because you probably think you're not allowed to when you're grieving. Right?
Absolutely. People, even Prince Harry said, I didn't cry. He felt like there was something wrong with him that he didn't cry. There's a lot of research that actually speaks to the fact that we don't have to do a lot of emotional processing necessarily with grief. Sometimes one of the most important things is to involve oneself in self-defining activities. Particularly for teenagers. So it might be if someone has connected to a parent who's died over art, that might be something that they would continue to do in their life and maybe go to school and pursue something like that.
Because it keeps them connected to the lost parent.
Absolutely.
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I wonder if part of the problem as well is that most of us adults are not all that comfortable talking about grief, and not necessarily all that good at dealing with grief. So the notion that we're going to be helpful to our children or adolescent young people when we're not dealing with it so well ourselves may be a bit fanciful. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Well, I think, that there really is a lot of stigma around grief and death and dying in society. Way? Well, still, just in the way that you were speaking about, right? That it's something that people don't want to talk about. Even in Ontario, people get 2 days unpaid leave. Federal government, I think it's a little bit better. So, that in itself is telling people this is something that we don't talk about, that we don't discuss. And for sure, some losses and deaths could be with drug overdoses, would definitely be more stigmatized than other deaths. So
I don't know if there's any research on this yet, but You know, young people no doubt lost parents and probably mostly grandparents during COVID-19. So in other words, of course they expected to lose these people in their lives at some point, but maybe not that quickly, and certainly not to a once-in-a-century global pandemic. Does that complicate how young people process grief?
Absolutely, I would say that it does. And there has been some research, but and definitely people are writing about it. But it's interesting, StatsCan has a statistic that 1 in 4 young people between the ages of 15 and 24 say that they feel lonely. This is not just in Canada.
And in normal times.
Yes. Well, this was in 2021, so they would have asked people before. But this is also across the US, UK, Europe. So if you're feeling lonely, and adolescence is difficult as is, the pandemic was a time when people were even more isolated. In fact, isolation was mandated. And it can be difficult to access public rituals that people would use, so that can make it more difficult. Also, people had to get used to saying goodbye to people through an iPad.
Yes.
And which, you know, sure, an iPad is fine when you have nothing else, but it doesn't, it's nothing like getting a hug from someone.
This is going to be a very inelegant way of putting it, so you're going to forgive me for my lack of technical language here. But essentially, if you're a good, sort of well-adjusted, decent kid and you experience grief, are you less likely to, quote unquote, act out than if you're kind of a pain in the neck kid and used to getting in trouble and difficult already?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's a good question. I think so much of this has to do with your support network and the people around you. So I would say that absolutely grief is something that adolescents can go through. My father died when I was 17. It was an awful time in my life. Look, here I am now talking to you. It's an area of study. So I think people can go through it. I think people who are struggling already, it can obviously exacerbate things and make things worse. I think connection is so important for people. I mean, that's really what grief is something that people can go through on their own, but mourning, the public part of it is something it's so important to connect to a larger group. Rituals can be very important for people, something that, was taken away through the pandemic. So.
Okay, you opened a door there, which you should never do.
Oh, no.
To me, anyway, because now I'm going to walk through it. Okay, so you're like in grade 12 when your dad dies.
That's right. Well, I wanted to say to you, I come to this area through lived experience, through my research, through social work practice. So yes, go ahead. Yeah.
There's no good time to lose a parent, but there are certainly better and worse times to lose parents, and this is presumably in high school when you're, as you suggested, trying to figure yourself out. This is a terrible time to lose your dad. How did he die?
It was a massive heart attack.
So it was quickly?
Yes.
So you had no chance to say goodbye?
No. That's right. Yeah, in fact, I think we had which is not unusual, a fight the night before he died. But is it unusual for kids to argue with their parents? Not at all. I have a teenage son now, and we argue about different things, and I think that families with teenagers would tell you that. So, these are the things that can make it difficult because teenagers are trying to figure out who they are, connected, separated from parents, just, how we were speaking when we started. And so it can make it particularly difficult when then a parent dies and it's almost like the before and after.
I'm going to use another one of these inelegant expressions, but it sums up, I think, well what I'm trying to convey here, which is my wife's father died 20 years ago.
Right.
She's not over it yet.
Yes.
She thinks about him every day.
Yes.
We talk about him a lot.
Yes.
Are you over your dad's death?
Well, the way that I look at it is that I feel that grieving is an ongoing process. I really don't feel that people talk about this idea of closure. I feel like it goes on, right? And there's going to be different things in our lives that are brought up that remind us of that person. So I don't think it's unusual at all. You know, I don't know if you remember Maurice Schwartz from a long time ago. He was talking about his own dying.
Tuesdays with Maury.
Yes,
yeah,
but
of course.
but he did interviews with, I think it was PBS. But one of the I show this video sometimes, so I'm unfamiliar with it. But you know, he's speaking about his mother's death at one point, and he begins to cry, and the interviewer says, "Oh, you're crying," and Maurice says, "There's no shame in crying. It's like there's all sorts of things that bring up the death of this person for me. So it's not unusual that someone, you know, a parent dies when someone's a teenager and throughout their life, and particularly significant events could be graduation, could be they get a new job, when they're in a relationship, a partnership. So, but it doesn't even have to be at points like that you can feel it more than other times. So I would say not unusual, and I believe, and there's a lot written to suggest that grief is an ongoing, evolving process.
Even all these years later?
Even all these years later.
How old was your dad when he died?
My dad was 67. So,
that's not very old.
It's not very old, no.
Okay, in which case, let's go back. A young person experiences significant loss and is grieving. How do they, like, what are the classic signs, if you're a parent, that you should look for in your kid to see whether they are or are not dealing with it well?
Yeah, well, I think that there are pieces that I would look out for that would be more worrisome. So, you know, if your kid is getting into drugs and alcohol and you're seeing
sign.
that, yes, I think that would be worrisome. Involved in more risky behavior, doing anything that might be harmful to oneself is something that I would look out for. Definitely isolating oneself. So it's not unusual that a teenager wouldn't want to talk to their family necessarily, but if they were also isolating themselves from friendship groups, not going out as much. For teenagers, going out is something that's really important, death or no death. So that's also something that I would really pay attention to. Really, I think extreme change in a person's mood.
Let me pick up on the going out. So if a kid in the immediate aftermath of their, let's say, a parent's death, decided that they felt more comfortable, or it was easier to grieve hanging out with friends as opposed to with family, that's okay?
Absolutely.
Because, of course, the surviving parent would probably tend to think, no, you should be with us right now, not off with your friends.
I'm not sure what the surviving parent might think, but boy, friends for teenagers, important. And if your child or teen has a friendship group that they're connected to, absolutely encourage that. So I think that that's really, really important. Paulo Freire speaks about this idea of critical hope. He talks about, in terms of dealing with despair, one of the important things is action, he says. And so, you know, I think that it's sometimes in doing things with our friends that in itself can be a sense of action and doing something that connects us with other people. If the friendship group is a group that someone feels like, oh, I can talk about what's going on. Sometimes that's not always the case, but...
Sure. Yeah. Can I assume that if you're a parent and you're trying to deal with your child's grief, that it's never a good thing to say, it's enough already, snap out of it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's not the right thing to do. Ever?
ever.
What if it's a year later and the kid's still moping around?
Well, I think everybody goes through their own process. And, you know, if you're saying a year later and the person's still moping around, I would say maybe the person hasn't had an opportunity to really express it and
Time to
talk
get some help,
about
maybe.
it. Perhaps that could be. Yeah, presence, I think. I'm also Jewish. We, you know, have the Shiva. Presence is something that's...
It's a 7-day period where people visit the house and...
That's right, thank you, yeah. But, you know, the idea of presence is something that's very important, in that being there for somebody, whether the person wants to talk to you or not, you're just there for them. I have a book that I use in my teaching sometimes. It's called R.V. Aardvark, Loses Hope. It's by Donna O'Toole. It's a book for children and adults, but it's this idea, R.V. Aardvark, all these animals, soon after there's a loss of his parent, all these animals come around, they want to support him. Nobody can do anything, and so they stop coming around. But then another animal comes and just sits there with them. It's this idea of presence again, and being there to listen, even if someone's not interested in talking to you. So,
well, I tell you, I've loved listening to you and have been very interested in what you had to say. So thanks a lot for coming into TVO and helping us out with this.
My pleasure.
That's Cheryl Ann Cate, Associate Professor, Faculty of Social Work, Wilfrid Laurier University. And that is the agenda for Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. After several recent arrests in the Norval Morrisseau art fraud case, tomorrow we'll take a closer look at what happened and what's needed to secure Morrisseau's legacy for the future. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
With thousands of in-depth interviews and discussions, The Agenda's YouTube channel delivers context for virtually any topic you're interested in. Check out our latest videos and playlists at youtube.com/theagenda. And make sure to hit the subscribe button to get notified about all our new conversations. It's all available at youtube.com/theagenda.